we have a boiler inspection procedure, and all our technicians have a boiler inspection checklist that we go through. And the first thing that your technician is going to check is to check the heat exchanger. So again, we go inside there, we look up with a mirror, and we look at the heat exchanger, make sure it's not dirty. Number 2 on our inspection checklist, make sure that you have a strong pilot flame, that it's hitting on your thermocouple well and creating a good flame to make sure your thermocouple stays hot. We're going to check what temperature it's at and what the pressure is running at right now. If the pressure is getting too high, again we start looking at your expansion tank or your boiler peak. Backflow preventer, which is that here. Make sure that it's not dripping. There's a relief port on the bottom of this. So this has 2 check valves inside it. It's designed so that your boiler water does not back up into your drinking water. That's important to check. If it's dripping, you probably need a new one. We're going to look around the whole boiler area, check everything for any signs of any leakage, any air vents that might be dripping. You don't want any leaks on a boiler system, because any leaks mean that fresh water is constantly being added to your system, and that's bad for a boiler system. We're going to check your relief valve here and make sure that nothing is dripping. Your auto vents, your air vents, we're going to check those and make sure they're not dripping, make sure the caps are not turned on tight so they're not even allowing air out. Many times what people will do, if water's coming out of this, because there's a problem with it, they'll just screw the tap on tight and say, there you go, the leak stopped. But now it's not going to let air out, so now you can get air in your system. You want to check all the venting on your boiler, make sure it's the proper gauge. You want to make sure it's not rusting out or anything. We've found boilers that the vent is completely rusting out, and maybe it's on the back side and nobody's seen it. We're going to check your combustion and ventilation air. We go out on the outside and make sure the screen isn't plugged up, because that's a very common thing where nobody ever has cleaned the intake screen for your combustion air, and it's just completely plugged up with dust. A lot of boilers we run into were never installed properly in the first place, or may have been built around the boiler. They may have built a room around an old boiler. So we check for proper clearances to combustibles and let you know if there is any issues with that. Very important not to store paints or any flammables or anything, dirty rags, oily rags. Don't pile all your boxes of Christmas stuff all around your boiler. We're going to look at your stuff like your wiring condition. Just make sure you have no loose wires, no loose connections or anything like that. We're going to check your pumps. So on this system here, we have 2 pumps. We check all your pumps, we check the amperage rating on them and make sure that they're running properly. We want to check your manifold pressure. Make sure that your gas valve is set to the proper pressure, so you're getting proper flame inside your boiler. And we clock the boiler as well, so at your meter, we check the dial and we watch the dial as it moves as we're running the boiler and make sure that it's clocking, we call it, at the proper rate. We're going to make sure when your boiler's firing that it's drafting properly. This is allowing fresh air or room air, basically, comes up into here, mixing with the products of combustion that the boiler is creating, and that comes up here. So we should be getting a draft back here. Again, if you had a blocked vent or a problem with your venting, you could get the product of combustion spilling out of the vent here. It's like a safety switch that's designed, if that's happening, to click off, but again, sometimes the safety switches don't work properly. So that's another important thing to check. He's going to check your zone valves one by one, turning up your thermostat, making sure that each zone valve works, and that each zone valve separately tells the boiler to come on too. He's going to check for gas leaks. So he's going to use a gas leak detector, and he's going to go throughout your gas system where it's exposed in the boiler room to your boiler and your hot water tank. The last thing we're going to do is do a carbon monoxide test. With your boiler running, we're going to check around the boiler and check for any carbon monoxide. And we also recommend that every house has a carbon monoxide detector. One outside the bedrooms where you're sleeping so that you hear something at night if there's a problem, and one downstairs in the boiler area but not right beside the boiler. It doesn't matter if you have a boiler like this, or you may have a furnace, or you may have a higher efficiency type system. Have an inspection yearly to make sure everything's safe.